Hello and welcome back to another Walking Dead video, and today I want to talk about the top 10 most underrated characters in The Walking Dead. And this list will be in no particular order, but I think every character that's on this list deserves a mention and they deserve a bit more praise, because I think all these characters are good characters, but they are either overhated or just not talked about that much. So let's jump right into this with my number 10, and I'm going to say Dwight. This is a character which is really good and really interesting. It's just a shame a lot of people, when they think of Dwight, they think of Fear the Walking Dead, and they don't really think about the 3 seasons that he was on The Walking Dead, the character arc he went on. This is a really complex and really cool character. It's a shame he's in season 7 and 8 with one of the worst seasons of The Walking Dead, and then he goes on to spend 4 seasons on Fear, and that just really overshadows the character of Dwight, which is really good. He's not as good as his comic book counterpart because of the whole Daryl thing, and they really had to cut Dwight's story short because of a lot of personal issues, but Dwight's a really good character, and he is one of the highlights of the Savior War. And number 9 has to be Yumo. I think she's a really strong character, but she is overshadowed very heavily by Connie and Kelly, I feel like, or even Luke at times. Yumo, outside of Magna, maybe one of the least popular newer characters introduced in season 9's reboot, but she is definitely, by season 11, one of the most important and fleshed out characters. She is really entertaining to watch, and I know her whole arc only exists because Michonne left, but what they did adapting Michonne's arc to Yumo worked really well, and by season 11 she was one of the standout characters in that season. And number 8 is Morgan, and I believe Morgan is just massively overhated. I think a lot of people, I've seen people say he's the cancer of the Walking Dead universe. Morgan is a good character, and I think a lot of people do also believe he's a good character, but a lot of people, and I feel a majority of people, just overhate on Morgan for no reason. In my opinion, he's one of the most well written and consistent. At times you have a bit of hiccups here and there, especially on The Walking Dead with season 7 and 8, but outside those issues, Morgan's a really good character, and it's a shame that a lot of people really don't like him, but for me he's one of my favourites. So I feel like because I really like Morgan and it seems like no one else does, I'm going to put him on this underrated list. Number 7 is Beth, and this is another character which is massively overhated, and I think it's because a lot of people really don't understand the point of Beth. She wasn't meant to be another Maggie that's good at surviving in the world. She was meant to be a character a bit similar to Carol, but because she's a child, she was sheltered a little, so that it took her longer to adapt to this world. But Beth, from start to finish, from her first appearance in season 2 to her last in season 5, she becomes a very drastically different character, and she's really entertaining, especially when they pair her with characters like Daryl. It really does help develop Beth's character. It's just a shame she was killed off before she could get even better and people could start to recognise how good of a character she actually was. Now number 6 is Dale, and this is a character which I have seen some people appreciate, but I feel like he should be appreciated more. Dale was basically the Herschel of season 1 and 2, and Herschel just took on Dale's role for season 3 and 4. And if you look at the original plans, Herschel was going to die and Dale was just going to continue on being the compass of the group and doing what Herschel did in season 3 and 4. So Dale is really important, and he has a massive impact on our major characters like Rick and even Daryl, but it is just kind of forgotten about, and everyone thinks, oh, the compass of the early seasons was Herschel. No, Herschel just picked up on what Dale started in the first 2 seasons. He does get some of the appreciation and does get some people actually going like he was a great character, unlike a lot of other characters on this list. But I feel like he just does deserve so much more. Jeffrey DeMung really knew how to play Dale, and it's just a shame we lost him so early on. Now number 5 is Abraham, and this character really was the funny of the show. A lot of the characters are really serious, and the show can be depressing at times, but when you had Abraham in season 4, 5 and 6, he brought the humour and really made some scenes a bit more light-hearted, like the scene in season 6, episode 16, where they're trying to get all the way to the hilltop. Maggie's really sick, she could be dying, And then you have Abraham pulling the joke about pulling the pipsqueak and talking about were they planning on making pancakes and stuff. He's a really great character, but he's massively overlooked. Look at his death, for example. Because Glenn died after him, no one really talks about Abraham's death. He's a character that just doesn't get mentioned too much anymore. And all the characters that are connected to Abraham went off and did their own things and then became way more popular. But Abraham really does feel like forgotten about. And it's like when people say, oh yeah, I left because Glenn died. Not because Abraham and Glenn died. He's a very forgotten character, and it's a real shame because he was one of my favourite characters for a really long time. And number 4 is Aaron, and he's definitely the biggest character on my list of overrated characters. Aaron is a beloved character, but I feel like he just doesn't get enough praise. He is one of the most consistently well-written characters in The Walking Dead, and he was around from season 5 until the end, and they always gave Aaron something interesting to do. And I really think Aaron was never really just sidelined. A lot of characters, when they've been around for a really, really long time, unless your name is Daryl or Carol, or even Negan or Maggie, there's a point where for a small period of time you are sidelined. Aaron really never felt like he was sidelined. He always had something to do, and he might have been outshined a lot by Gabriel, which doesn't help, because they were a great pairing, but Gabriel went off to have one of the best arcs in the Walking Dead franchise, and he deserves all that praise, but I feel like a lot of people forget about Aaron's story. And one final thing I have to mention is I feel like Aaron's one of the best, well-written gay characters in the Walking Dead franchise. They never make it just a whole thing, and there are a lot of other gay characters or characters who are LGBTQ in the franchise, but sometimes they make it a bit more obvious, or they make it that's their thing. But for Aaron, he is gay, they give him a husband, they make him maybe start a relationship with Jesus, but they never make it a whole thing. It is just, oh, this character wants to go with this character, or this character with this character, like they do with all the straight characters. He is so well written from start to finish. He never really has any issues, and I feel like a lot of people just kind of overlook him a lot of the time because of characters like Gabriel, or even some of the small side characters like Eugene just always outshine Aaron, which is quite a shame. Now number 3 is Simon, and he's one of my favourite villains in The Walking Dead, just because you have Stephen Ogg play this completely unhinged character, and you can tell Stephen Ogg is enjoying every minute of it. Simon is one of the best villains, and I think it's because they gave all of Negan's evil tendencies to Simon. If they merged Simon and Negan together, you would get the ultimate best villain in The Walking Dead. But Simon by himself is still absolutely amazing, and he really is one of the best bits, as I said about Dwight, of the Saviour War. Maybe the war was terrible, but you had all these amazing characters, and I really like Simon and Negan's dynamic, and how Simon wants to take out Negan, take over the Saviours. There is a lot going on with Simon. He's such just a full-on evil character in a world where in The Walking Dead they try and have all the villains be kind of broken or corrupt, but Simon is just pure evil straight and through, and it's just so great. And when people talk about best villains, they never really mention Simon a lot. They mention the iconics like Negan, the Governor, but I think Simon should be mentioned a lot more when talking about villains. And number 2 is Tyrese, and he was my favourite character in season 4 and 5. It's just a shame they killed him off, because I think Tyrese would have been a really interesting character to see meet the Alexandrians and maybe kill him off in No Way Out and give him the Morgan death in the right arc. But what we got from Tyrese was absolutely amazing in the 3 scenes we had him in. He was this kind of gentle giant, and I really like how they always paired him with interesting characters, like having the gentle giant with Carol. Absolutely amazing pairing. He has some of the best episodes, and I really, really like how they really changed Tyrese from the comics. I know it's all because of Daryl, and in the comics, Tyrese was this big brute, but they really changed him quite a lot, and I think he's a character which is almost completely different to his comic counterpart, but I do prefer the TV version of Tyrese for some reason over the comic version. And when people talk about the early seasons, they don't really mention Tyrese too much, and saying he might used to be my favourite character, I definitely think he is underrated. Number 1 is Bob, and I couldn't make a list about underrated characters about Bob. Bob, in my opinion, is the most realistic character we've ever seen in The Walking Dead. He is just such a relatable character, and it's just such a shame that he only lasted 2 seasons, but the story of Bob and the arcs they gave him are something they've never done before. I really, really enjoyed them giving Bob an addiction storyline and depicting how addiction would really work, or not really, but you know what I mean, like very much could work in an apocalypse and how that affects, like in his first ever episode, Bob is an alcoholic. He's trying to get past his addiction, but his addiction led to the roof collapsing in the supermarket and people dying, like Beth's boyfriend. He had some severe consequences to that, and they did some really great storylines with Bob, and he's definitely one of the most least underrated characters on this list, but I couldn't make a list of my opinion of the most underrated characters without mentioning Bob at some point in this list. And as always, this is just my personal opinion, so please tell me down below what are your rankings and your top 10 down in the comments. And this is it for me today, so thank you for watching, and I will talk to you later. Goodbye.